Thanks for joining me for this foundational flow. The purpose of this class is to give those who are newer to the practice something to work with, something to start with, and to create a flow sequence that also anyone can use if you just want to go back to some of the fundamentals and some of the basics. So it'll be pretty cut and dry. We're going to focus on moving with the breath as always, but on a more foundational way. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Basic foundational posture, child's pose. Big toes together, knees spread apart. Reach your arms out in front. Let your head rest on the mat and feel your shoulders begin to soften and relax, your shoulder blades spreading outward along the rib cage. Beginning to deepen each and every breath, a 4 to 5 count in and out. So the breath, the pranayama, the practice of breathing, moving energy on the breath, becomes our guide, and it's going to guide us through this practice today as we begin to connect the postures with the breath. Now on your next inhale, we're going to come up into a tabletop and pretty traditionally bringing the knees under the hips, the shoulders over the wrist. We'll inhale the breath, arch the back, palms press, crown of the head lifts, my tailbone goes up, so it's an anterior pelvic tilt, extension of the spine. Exhale, pressing down to round like a cat. Inhale, repeating arching of the back, extension of the spine, pulling the heart forward as I still press down into the ground. Exhale, tucking the chin, finding that round. We'll do it one more time. Big inhale, extension of the spine. I'm pulling heart through. And as I exhale, I round into the cat. Palms pressing into the mat. Bottom ribs pulling in. Flexion of the spine. One more time, we'll come through the cow extension. And we're going to find a neutral spine. Bottom ribs are going to pull inward. Tailbone tucks just slightly. So it's more just a neutral pelvis. But the bottom ribs drawing in. That's your transverse abdominis, should help with that. Now, as I look at my hands, index fingers are pointing forward, hands are over or underneath the shoulders, crown of the head is lengthening forward, the back of the neck is flat. From here, I'm going to extend the right leg straight, just pressing the heel back. And for many of us, this might be a stretch in the calf. What we're going to concentrate on next is keeping a level pelvis and staying out of our lower backs. So pushing down into the hands and in through the lower ribs. Your right leg's going to lift. And notice, I don't take that right leg too high. That makes me tilt my pelvis and dump into my spine. I'm just going to give it a couple inches lift so the glute and hamstring are active. Now I'm going to take my left hand first to my lower ribs to pull in, and then I'll reach the left hand forward. Big inhale breath, and as we exhale, we have the elbow and the knee meet in the middle. Again, inhale, extend, staying out of the lower back, pulling the bottom ribs in. Exhale, crunch. Again, inhale, extend. Exhale, crunch and squeeze. One more time, inhale, leveling the pelvis, pulling in, and then switching to the other side. So I'll extend my left leg straight first, heel presses back, palms press into the mat. Now I'm going to lift left foot just enough to engage the glute and the hamstring. Right hand comes to touch the lower ribs to pull in to keep that neutral pelvis and neutral spine. Right hand forward, inhale, exhale, squeeze. Inhale, reach. Exhale, crunch. Inhale. Exhale. One more time. We extend, level pelvis, and release. I'm going to place the left foot down, ball of the foot on the mat. Right leg extends straight to meet that. Pressing down into the hands, the shoulder blades are going to spread instead of letting me collapse. So I push down, scapula protraction, bottom ribs pull in, pelvis tilts up a little bit. Now I shift forward, and on an exhale breath, I'm going to lower all the way down to my chest on this first one. Notice my hands position here. My hands aren't under my shoulders. Hands are next to the chest. Elbows are in. Index fingers are still pointing forward. We'll come into cobra to begin. I like the elbows to be bent, collarbones to spread, and then notice your shoulders and your neck get long through your neck. Look from right to left. Good. Curl your toes underneath. Now I stay on my knees as I push back. From here, I hover my knees off the mat and then send it back into a downward facing dog. At this point, you can pedal your dog, bending one knee at a time. And then we'll find alignment in the downward facing dog. And in downward facing dog, we want to make sure the shoulder blades are spreading across the back. So scapulas protract, arm bones rotate externally So biceps facing forward, triceps spiraling inward, biceps ears. Now pulling the bottom ribs in instead of doing what a lot of people want to do, which is dump into the posture or stay high and tight, rounding the spine. We want to push through, hips high, and then I draw bottom ribs in. As I knit my ribs, I create more length and space. I like to lift the toes as I press the heels toward the mat, inner thighs back. And notice the distance, shoulders right over wrist, feet position, downward facing dog. There's a tendency to shorten the stance just to get the feet flat, but we're not going to do that. Now we'll slowly walk to the top of the mat and start with a wide stance. There's a reason I do that. It's a little bit more easy for the hamstrings with a wider stance. It's less tension on the hamstrings. Now let the head hang, grab your elbows, and begin to sway from side to side. Just a gentle sway from left to right. Then an up and down movement and forward and back. Up and down, forward and back. All right, we're going to take our half lift, hands on the shins, crown of the head reaches. Crown of the head is reaching forward, flat back as much as I possibly can. And then I'm going to rise all the way up to stand. Reach up with both hands, palms facing one another. The key, when we get into the arms overhead, which we do quite often through our practice, is for the arm bones to stay externally rotated. Pinky fingers spiraling inward, arm bones spiraling outward. Bottom ribs are going to pull in, arches of my feet lift, and I press through the edges of my feet without lifting the toes, and then taking it over into a side stretch over to the right. We're going to bring the hand down to the thigh. What I like to make sure I do here is shift the hips. So if I'm leaning to my right, I want my hips to go to my left. Otherwise, this can start happening. We create a pinch. So I want the hips to shift, reaching out through the fingertips. Deep breath into it. Coming to center, inhale. And then over to my left. Hips will shift to the right. Breathing, reaching through the side body, palm facing down toward the ground. Coming back up to center with an inhale. Now as we exhale, we're just going to come right down the middle, hinging at the hips. From here, right knee bends. We're going to go right fingertips below the right shoulder, right arm straight down to the ground. I turn my chest to the left, reach the left hand up in the air. My outer left hip is going to draw back. Toes stay in, and then notice your right knee. Make sure it stays in line with the right ankle and foot. Take another deep breath. And then left hand comes down. As we do so, left knee bends. Left hand below the left shoulder, right leg straight. Turn the chest and then reach up in the air. As that right hip draws back, my left knee presses out a little bit. Deep breath into the twist, making sure the hand doesn't fall behind you. We're not dumping into the shoulder with this. And then hand comes down. Now, pivot your heels in, yogi squat. There's a tendency for the tailbone to drop and the spine to round. And if you have to lift your heels off the ground, that's okay. Heels can come up off the ground. That has to do with an impingement of the hip or maybe some limitation or tightness. Now, what I want to do here is use my glutes. My knees push out, my tailbone lifts a little bit, and then I can find spinal extension. Now, as I place my hands on the mat, I'll step back to a plank. Shoulders are over the wrist. Coming into Chaturanga, Dandasana, Chaturanga. We bend the elbows 90 degrees, but there's a forward movement that happens to keep my elbows over my wrists. And then you can press the heels back and then come up into upward facing dog. And notice if your heels want to go out, keep your heels aligned. There's some action of the inner thighs. I'm pushing down through the hands, up through the crown, and I take my gaze forward and slightly up, but I don't like to look up to the ceiling. I tend to crank on my neck. Collarbones are spread, belly is drawing in, and the tops of my thighs press. And as I push down into the tops of my feet and my hands, I can roll over my toes or take a little step into downward facing dog. Deep breath here, shoulders away from the ears. We're going to rise up onto the balls of the feet. And as we bend the knees, we'll walk, step, or hop to the top of the mat. I like to create a slightly wider than foot together stance. So 1 to 2 fists in between, depending on the width of your hips. The more wide your hips, the wider the stance should be. Now the half lift traditionally will go fingertips, hands to shins, or my version of this, which is reaching both arms back, palms facing the mat, pulling in through the lower ribs. As we exhale, folding forward, you can grab the ankles or the calves. Inhale, rising all the way up to stand. Now, my arms are overhead, Urdhva Hastasana. What tends to happen is we dump into our lower back, the pelvis tilts forward, and the ribs go out. The ribs go out because the shoulder blades are pushing the rib cage forward. So pull those lower ribs inward as you reach the arms upward. And then as we exhale, we're going to draw the hands right through heart center and let the hands come down. Now we're focusing on being fluid. So as I exhale, it's down. And I don't stop the movement. I inhale, reach all the way around. Exhale, folding forward. Inhale, half lift. Exhale to the bottom of a push-up, chaturanga. Inhale, up dog. Exhales, downward facing dog. Keeping it seamless to flow. Inhale, up on your toes. Exhale, bend, step or jump. Inhale, hands reach back, lengthen out, palms down, thumbs out. Exhale, fold forward. Inhale, bringing it up to stand. Exhale, follow the hands down. Circle them around. Inhale, fold forward, exhale. Inhale, half lift. This time I'm on my fingertips. Exhale to the bottom of a push-up, step or jump. Inhale, up dog. Exhale, downward facing dog. Next inhale breath, lift the heels. Exhale, knees bend, jump or step. Inhale, reach back. Exhale, fold. Inhale, rise to stand. Exhale, hands come down. Circle around. Inhale, pull in the ribs. Exhale, hinge at the hips. Inhale, fingertip. Exhale, bottom of a push-up, chaturanga. Inhaling up. Exhale, downward facing dog. So that was our sun salutation with a little bit of a variation in between, keeping it more fluid. Now we're going to lift the right leg. As we do so, we want to maintain squared hips and a neutral pelvis. I like the right leg to be straight, so I stay engaged in my glute and hamstring as I lift. Without stacking it open, I'm going to stay squared hips. Now exhale, we'll bring the knee to the chest and step to the right thumb, coming into our runner's lunge. We want the hips to be level or lower than the front knee. Left knee is going to come down to the ground. We're going to press the top of the left foot down into the mat. Inhale, reaching up, Anjaneyasana. Now when we come up, the hip points pull up, the tailbone tucks. This keeps me from dumping into my lower back. Hip points lift. Now the bottom ribs draw in. The front heel and the back knee squeeze. Palm facing one another. Big inhale breath. Exhale to the bottom of a push-up, chaturanga. Inhale, up dog. Exhales down. Left leg lifts, straight leg squared hips. You can feel a little inner thigh engagement. Exhale, bring it to the chest, step to the thumb, runner's lunge. I want my hips level or below my knee. My back knee gently comes down. I don't drop it. I set it. Top of right foot press. Pelvis lifts, tailbone tucks under as I reach up. Palms facing one another. Squeeze your left hamstring by pulling your left heel towards your back knee, keeping the bottom ribs knitted tight. Exhale, chaturanga. Inhale, up. Exhales, down dog. Now, we can simplify this, and we can stay with an Anjaneyasana and continue and flow. What we're going to do next is we're going to add in the warrior one. Slightly different stance. Downward facing dog. Right leg lifts, got those squared hips. We're stepping to the right hand, and I say that kind of ambiguously. And I want you to notice this. When stepping into a warrior one, what tends to happen is that back heel comes forward, and then when I spin my foot flat, I'm heel to heel aligned, and my toes are turned out to the side, and it's nearly impossible for my hips to square up to the front. What I like to do is I like to step toward my right hand. In fact, my toes touch the base of my thumb. What I'll do next from there, so it's a slightly shorter stance, I will either, one of two things, drive my heel back, then spin the foot flat, and that gets me to be a little bit more aligned to the front of the mat. The other option is after I step, I can shorten the stance, back foot coming up. Now when I come up, I'm really squared to the front. Hip points lift. Remember, notice that tends to happen in most of our postures, pulling the hip points up, the bottom ribs in, hands reaching up, maybe the palms come together to touch. Exhale, bottom of a push-up, chaturanga. Inhaling up dog, exhales down. Left leg, inhale, lift. Exhale, I'm stepping to the base of my thumb with my toes. Now, back foot, option one, heel back, foot flat. Option two, I can shorten up the stance. We pull the pelvis up as we rise up to warrior one. Back leg pressing straight, pushing through the outer edge. Right hip forward, ribs pulling in, maybe my palms touch. Now, watch my feet as I adjust. Hands to the mat. When I step my left foot back, my right foot has to slide back to meet it. Inhaling up dog, exhales down, because I shortened it when we did it the first time. Now, simply flowing with the breath, inhale, lift the right leg. Exhale, take your step. Back foot is flat, then we inhale, rise, warrior one. Exhale to the bottom of the push-up. Inhale, up dog. Exhales down. Inhale, lift the left. Exhale, take a step. Back foot flat, then I inhale to rise. Exhale, bottom of push-up. Inhale up. Exhales down. 2 more rounds. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Chaturanga, exhale. Inhale. Exhale, down dog. Inhale, left. Exhale, step. Warrior one, we rise. Exhale, chaturanga. We're going one more time. Inhale up. Exhale down. Right leg, inhale. Exhale, step. Warrior one, inhale, rise up. Exhale, bottom of a push-up. Inhale, up dog. Exhales down. Left leg, inhale. Exhale, step. Warrior one, inhale, breath. Exhale, bottom of push-up. Inhale. Down dog, exhale. Come down and rest. Child's pose, down on your knees. So that was a variation of a Sun B. We left out some things, we added a little bit of movement, and we made it very fluid. What we'll do next is a Sun C. Sun Salutation C. It's kind of a made-up thing that is added to the practice, and we'll move through postures that then begin to open up the pelvis and open up the hips. All right, let's work our way back to downward facing dog. Plank, pressing the hips back. Inhale, lift the right leg up. This time we can let the knee bend and stack the hips. Level your shoulders. That right shoulder wants to lift, so bring the right shoulder down a little bit. Notice the back heel. Don't let it spin out. And then exhale, step between your hands. Back foot goes flat. So I'm heel to heel aligned from front to back, like I'm standing on a balance beam. We'll reach the left arm up and then inhale up to warrior two. Pausing here, back hip, it tends to rise high. Bring that back hip down and the outer right hip back. Now, this is not a perfectly squared hip posture to the side. There's a subtle inward rotation of the back thigh that keeps my right knee steady and safe. Arms reach front to back, chest is open. Bottom ribs are pulling in, so focusing on a level and neutral pelvis. I'll reverse my warrior, Viparita Virabhadrasana, or exalted warrior. Keeping the front toes relaxing, keeping a deep bend in the front knee, exhaling into extended side angle. I prefer hand on the outside or on a block. The other option would be inside or forearm coming to the thigh. Now, if I rest on my thigh, my shoulder, my hand's in, my shoulder comes in. So if I'm going to go to my thigh, I'm going to go hand forward, palm up, pressing down. This top arm now reaches an extension. The arm bone spiraling, tricep moving toward my face, bicep toward my ear. My shoulder blade is wrapping around the rib cage. Now we can straighten the front leg and reverse our triangle pose. I prefer a longer stance for triangle. Oftentimes people will shorten their stance. Nothing wrong with that, but for transitional purposes, I like it to stay longer. Reaching back, palm facing the back wall, left shoulder back, more of a side body stretch than it is a back bend. As I come to center, I want to move from the pelvis, shifting the hips, reaching from fingertips to the shin. I recommend staying mid-shin to start. The tendency to touch the ground will get my spine to come forward and I'll lean in. So it may not be necessary. Some of you may be able to touch the ground, that's great. What I want here is my top hip to press toward the left side of my mat and my bottom shoulder to move back. I'm reaching straight up with the left hand. Maybe the gaze is at the thumb. Maybe you're looking down at the ground. Bottom ribs are in. Core is active, transverse abdominis. I'm going to rebend my front knee and inhale, reverse warrior. Exhale, windmilling the hands to the mat. Now, when I step back, I don't shift my weight back. I push into the mat and bring my heart forward as I step back. Inhale, up dog. Exhales down. Left leg lifts. So open up the hip this time, pressing the left side of the chest toward the mat, right inner heel toward the floor. Stepping between the hands, back foot flat, heel to heel aligned. I'm going to start with just my right arm up in the air. Now I'm aligned to rise into warrior two. The adjustment is the pelvis. I want level pelvis, so back hip down, and then hip points lift. Now from here, that back foot is inwardly rotated, or the thigh. Arms are out wide, chest is facing the side, gazing over the front middle finger. I'll keep the bend in the knee and reverse my warrior. On the next exhale breath, I can come down. Now, again, this is the option. Outside, inside, block, or resting on the thigh. If I'm on the thigh, I want my left arm bone bicep to face forward so I'm not dumping into the shoulder. Top hip is pressing toward the right side of the mat. I'll reach forward with the right hand, tricep spiraling inward, bicep spiraling outward. Pressing through the outer edge of the back foot. There's always a tendency that right hip kind of rides high. Push it down a bit. Reversing triangle. Again, you can shorten your stance a tad, but don't focus on over shortening the stance so we can flow. Reaching up and back. Side stretch rather than a back bend. And then coming forward, I move my hips back. My pelvis shifts and I reach through my left side body to the shin. Avoiding the leading in, I press my top hip toward the right side of my mat. The left shoulder draws back. Hands are essentially stacked and I can gaze up. Stay engaged, transverse abs, bottom ribs draw in. Breathing deep. And then bending the left knee, we'll inhale, reverse warrior one last time. Exhale to chaturanga. Chest stays forward, foot steps back. Inhale up. And exhale, downward facing dog. Okay, we'll put it together and move with the breath. Inhale, right leg. Exhale, step between the hands. Back foot goes flat. Inhale, reverse warrior. Exhale, extended side angle. Inhale, reverse triangle. Exhale, triangle pose. Bending the front knee. Inhale, reverse warrior. Exhale, windmill chaturanga. Inhale, up dog. Exhale, down. Left leg, inhale. Exhale, take your step between your hands. Back foot flat. Inhale, take it all the way back. Circle the arms. Exhale, left hand touches the mat, maybe fingertip. Reverse triangle. Inhale, inner thigh squeeze. Exhale, triangle, hips shifting. Bending the front knee. Inhale, reverse warrior. Exhale, chaturanga. Inhale, up. Exhales down. One more time. Inhale, right leg up. Exhale, step. Reverse warrior. Inhale. Exhale, extended side angle. Inhale, reverse triangle. Exhale, triangle pose. Inhale, reverse warrior. Exhale, chaturanga. Inhale up. Exhales down. Left leg, inhale. Exhale, step. Reverse warrior, inhale, breath. Exhale, side angle, reach and extend. Reverse triangle, inhale. Triangle, exhale. Reverse warrior, inhale. Exhale, chaturanga. Heart forward, step back. Inhale up. Exhale, down dog. All right, come down and rest. Child's pose or on your knees. Great job. Breathing, steady, same pace. If you know that you're short of breath, you're catching yourself in that way, it just means you're moving too quick. Slow down the movements. Allow the breath to take you deeper into the posture. That's the idea of the flow. Okay, back to downward facing dog. We will step the right foot forward into a runner's lunge position. We're going to incorporate another little flow here next. All right, we're going to work on a modified crescent lunge. Now I'm stepping to my right thumb, a slightly wider stance. Okay, and the reason I do that is I want to have some balance. I don't want to be on a train track. What I'll do next is bend the back knee, but don't let it touch. The tailbone's going to tuck under, and I pull my pelvis up as I rise up. I call this modified crescent lunge. It's a challenging posture to stabilize. So you almost want to push your knees out a little bit, tailbone down, front ribs pull in. Now with an exhale breath, we're going to lean forward, straighten the back leg, sweep the hands behind. Palms face down, chest and ribs pull off the thigh. We'll come forward, hands to heart, shift into warrior three. Now I want my left hip down a little bit so it helps me as I bend slightly into my right knee. You can either flex or floint the back foot. Now slowly diving the hands down to the ground into standing splits. The idea, maintaining squared hips. I'll take a big step back. I'm going to spin the back foot flat. Opening up, I come up all the way, rise. Now, transition here. Hands up in the air, front foot pivots. When that front foot pivots in, I can have better stability, so I can then draw my hands to heart and pivot the heels inward. Toes will naturally go out. Rather than turning my toes outward, which gives me too wide of a stance, I pivot the heels in to goddess. Knees out, tailbone down, front ribs in. Elbows come forward instead of pull back. So you're active in your core. Now watch my feet as I transition here. I begin to straighten the legs and I press the heels outward as my arms circle upward, and then exhale, come down into a wide leg forward fold. Prasarita Padottanasana. What we'll do from here next is we'll bring the hands around to the front, come into a runner's lunge, step the left foot up, space in between your feet, 1 to 2 fists. Toes are pointed forward. We're going to bend the knees and sit into a chair pose. Bottom ribs are pulling in, so it's less of a tuck under. It's the focus on the core, front ribs in. Now lift your chin. Hands are reaching forward and up. 3, 2, 1, forward fold. Take a half lift on your fingertips. Exhale to the bottom of push-up, step or jump, chaturanga. Inhale, up dog. Exhales down. Left leg lifts. We step to the left thumb. Very specific. Runner's lunge. We're slightly off center. Bending into the front knee. Chest lifts. Okay. We bend the back knee. We're not going to rest it. We're going to bend it. My pelvis tilts up. tailbone tucks under, modified crescent lunge. And you might feel a little wobbly, knees outwards slightly. This is the stabilization of the glute medius. Bottom ribs in. Big inhale breath. Exhale, lean, the hands sweep. There's a tendency for the hip to draw out. Pull that left hip back. Palms face the mat. Back leg is active and straight. Now I come forward into my left leg into warrior three. That right hip's going to want to lift. Bring the hip down, bend the left knee. 3, 2, 1. Hands to the mat, standing splits. Give it a lift, lift, lift. Let's try to stay squared hips, and then big step all the way back. Okay, we're stepping all the way back. Back foot goes flat. I'm now heel to heel aligned. I'm going to circle up, and as I rise through what some people call star pose, I want to turn my front toes inward. Now my heels come in as I come into goddess. I don't want my tailbone to rise up, so tailbone goes down. That pushes my knees outward. Front ribs stay in. Instead of pinching the shoulder blades, I allow them to spread and stay extended up through the crown of the head. The feet, focus on the feet. As I rise, my heels pivot out and I reach up high. From here, we swan dive down into the wide leg forward fold. Reaching through the heart, arches of the feet lift, press through the edges, lift the chest, bring it around to the front, and we step up. Right foot steps, there's some space between the feet. I'm going to bring my tailbone down a little bit, front ribs pull in, neutral pelvis, breathe. Lift your chin, there's a tendency to kind of collapse. Get your chin up, 2. Now I'm going to sweep my hands back behind me, palms face the mat. Okay, what I'll do next is I'm going to come up onto the balls of my feet, hands to heart. So I'm resting my sits bones on my heels, hands to heart center, nice upright spine. I'm going to pivot the heels inward, hands come down, garland pose, and we'll just take a seat. Lying onto our backs next, knees bent, feet flat. All right, we'll pull in the lower ribs. I want the heels close to the hips. Toes are pointed forward. Maybe even walk your heels outward just a little bit. Bottom ribs knit, engaging the core. Arms by your sides, option palms up. Grab your mat or interlace your hands underneath you as you lift. Knees squeeze in a little bit like you're holding a balloon. You don't want to pop it. You don't want to drop it. Your pelvis is tucked under, your hips lift. 3. Keep pressing through the feet. 2. And 1. Slowly lower down, tailbone tucking under, lower back can rest. We're just going to take the knees from right to left here. We'll come to center. Knees are going to stay bent. We're going to hug right knee to chest. Okay? My left knee stays bent. With my left hand, I'll bring it to my outer right knee and bring it across the body. The outer left thigh goes down, and my right arm is going to reach out. The outer left thigh is down. This knee may not be down, but I'm just using my hand to hold it in place. Another option is to shift the hips back to the right side of the mat a little bit. Just make sure your knee is at least level or higher than your pelvis. Another deep breath. Bring it back to center. I scoop my hips to the middle of my mat. Left knee draws to chest. We can make our adjustment here by scooting the hips to the left. My right knee will come down. My left arm is going to reach out. Using the right hand to pull the knee down. Deep breath. Coming through center, centering the hips. And we're going to reach for the knees, pull in, and then reach for the feet. Happy baby, pressing the knees toward the floor. Tailbone down. We'll reach for the back of the thighs. rocking up to a seat. Soles of the feet together, knees wide. So bound angle pose. Bound angle, kind of like a butterfly. I'm going to keep the feet pressed together the whole time, using the strength of my outer hips to push the knees down. I like to stretch the arms in front and let the head come down. Just deep breath. 3, 2, 1. We rise up, extending the right leg out to the front, Janu Shirshasana, head to the knee, but we're actually going past the knee with the head. Reach both arms up in the air. Turn your chest over toward the right toes, and then fold, reaching as far as you can. Maybe you just touch the mat, the shin, whatever you can get. The heart is coming forward, and then I can bow the head down. Allowing each and every breath to guide you deeper into the stretch. Good. Sitting up to switch. Right knee bends, left leg extends. Right arm reaches high. And then we're going to fold forward, reaching out, head coming down. Keep lengthening through the crown of the head. Nice deep breath. Sitting up. Both legs extend to the front, and we're going to move the sits bones back one at a time. There's a slight inward rotation of the thigh. The feet are flexed. Get long through your spine. The idea is that the pelvis is going to tilt forward instead of stay back like that. As I reach up, my pelvis tilts. I keep a long spine for as long as I can. Maybe the knees bend a little bit. That's totally fine. I'm going to bow the head down. Staying connected to the breath. And then we'll slowly come up. I'm going to open up my feet as wide as the mat, supporting, scoot my hips forward, lying onto the back. Final resting pose, arms by your sides, palms up, giving permission to relax. So probably the most important 5 minutes of any yoga class is this. Give yourself permission to be here for as long as you'd like. Thanks for joining me in this fundamental, foundational flow.